What's up, campers? If you clicked on this video, you are probably looking to purchase or have already purchased the Takibi Tarp Hexa set by Snow Peak, so here's an in-depth walkthrough. The Hexa Tarp is the perfect addition to pair with the Alpha Breeze tent. If you want a walkthrough of the Alpha Breeze tent setup, scroll through my page, I have that video as well. I've had the Hexa Tarp for a while, but honestly I was a little intimidated to set it up until I went to Snow Peak Way in 2024, and I really saw the benefits of having this tarp in all types of weather. It's a great way to shelter you and the homies from sun, rain, heavy mist, and at night you can have a fire under it because the inner layer is actually spark resistant. Not only does it set a great vibe, but as you can see here in Sean and Danielle's setup, it actually keeps the warmth in and makes it super cozy. So at Snow Peak Way, I was able to attend a workshop by Nick from the Portland store who showed us how to set up this tent properly with tricks and tips. Shout out Sir Campthropology walking in the background with his newborn. In a second, you'll see Nate in the denim shirt that runs the Discord and Reddit for Snow Peak. And here's a fun fact that Nick shared with us.
Fun fact, this material is actually used by the Japanese fire department. That's where we got the idea from. It is a fireproof liner. You won't have to worry about smoke ruining this tarp, as well as embers burning and ruining the hole in your tarp.
So with that being said, I want to pass along some of the tricks and tips that Nick taught us, but before we do that, let's set her down and look what comes inside the package. So like I said, this is not my first time setting up the tent, but as you'll see here, I tend to keep the fireproof layer attached to the outer layer, and I also tend to keep the guy lines for the sides also attached because those really never change. And I find that keeping those things attached makes the setup a little easier. So next in the package, you're going to see the poles. Now there are two main poles. Each pole has 4 pieces each. The Hexa Tarp also comes with some pretty heavy duty stakes to stake it down, as well as the 2 main longer guy lines. So the 2 main poles are actually 2 different sizes, and the pieces for each pole are also different sizes. You can mark them, but I tend to just put them next to each other and separate them based on the short ones and the tall ones. The 4 sections of each pole contain 2 middle sections as well as a top section with a textured point that the grommet from the tarp grips onto, as well as a bottom section right there that allows the pole to grip to the floor. To connect the poles, you just push down on the aluminum button and line it up with the hole, and it will snap in place. And once you make all the proper connections, you will have 1 short pole and 1 longer pole. So the longer pole is going to correspond to the point on your ridgeline with the red buckle and the red straps, which you'll see in a second. And the shorter pole is going to correspond to the side with the gray buckle and the gray straps. So what I'm doing here is laying the poles in the proximate location of which direction I want the ridgeline to be. Next, we're going to want to prepare our tarp for an easy setup. And here you're going to see the reason why I keep the flame-proof inner attached to the outer, because I think it's just easier when you're setting up this step. Here I am looking for the gray buckle and the red buckle. Those are going to be your ridge lines, meaning that's where the poles are going to connect to the grommets from the spike. So I'm showing you the setup with 1 person, but it is actually easier with 2 people. What you want to do again is locate the red and the gray straps. There's the gray one, and here's a red one I'm about to show you. If you have 2 people, 1 person grab the gray, 1 person grab the red, and basically walk away from each other. And this will naturally cause the tarp to fold by itself, hot dog style, but because it's just me, I want to find and locate them. And what I'm going to do is pull the red one towards the long pole, and I'm going to pull the gray one towards the short pole, and it'll take a while, but I'll finally get it flattened out, and you'll see what it looks like when it's on the ground, almost ready to erect. So now that I got it flattened out, here's what it looks like. It's almost a 2D version of the tarp where the ridge line is right there in the middle and the poles are at either end. So I'm going to walk over, grab my Snow Peak hammer, grab 2 tent stakes, and this is a key part. Take your tent pole and line it up with the tip of the tarp and lay it down parallel to the ridge line. Next, I'm going to pick it up while keeping the tip furthest from the tarp on the ground and lay it down in a right angle from its original position. And wherever the end of that pole lands, that's where I'm going to start my first tent stake. Next, I'm going to do the same thing, pick up the pole, keeping that same point down and laying it on the other side. Basically just flipping it from that second position. And again, wherever that end of the pole falls, I'm going to start my second tent stake. So if that was a little fast, don't worry. Let's do it a second time on the other side. First, I'm starting by the tip of the tarp, dropping it down in a parallel manner. Then picking it up from the other farthest tip and laying it at a right angle. That's where I'm starting my third tent stake. And then from that same point, lifting it up, flipping it around, basically 180 degrees. And where the point falls there, I'm doing my fourth tent stake. So for you visual learners, here's a quick diagram. Wherever you see the 4 asterisks, that is where you're going to have a tent stake. Next, we're going to need our 2 main guy lines, and because I keep the other 4 attached to the tie down points, there are only 2 left that are in the bag. So when you see this tent set up, it looks like there are 2 separate guy lines attached to the 2 main poles, but it's actually one continuous guy line. In the middle, there's a loop that attaches to the spike of the tent pole, and on each side of the loop, there are 2 big adjustable loops that will actually wrap around your tent stake. So next, what you want to do is grab one of the loops and walk over to your tent stake and loop it around it. Now my tent stake came out right now, so I'm going to hammer it in because like I said, I just started them just in case I needed to adjust where they are, but I'm pretty confident in the placement, so I'm going to go ahead and hammer this almost all the way in. Next, I'm going to grab the guy line and walk it over. I'm going to pass the loop in the middle and go to the other side of the bigger loop and loop it around the tent stake as well. And as you can see here, I'm a little short, but that's okay. Like I said, these big loops are adjustable. So what I'm going to do is take the little silver tab. Now I'm going to slide that tab toward the tent stake, and what it's going to do is it's going to lengthen the overall length of the entire guy line. So now it's going to reach that second tent stake. And again, I'm pretty confident in the placement, so I'm going to go ahead and hammer it in about halfway. So now that both of the bigger loops are looped around the tent stakes, meaning they are attached, I'm going to walk to the other side and try to even both of these loops, again, by sliding the silver tab either to or away from, and that's going to either make the loops bigger or smaller, but I want them pretty even. Do the same thing to the other side. And I'm going to find the center loop. That's how you're going to know they're even. And I'm going to pull it back, and you'll see here from first person perspective, I'm going to ballpark them, make sure they're even, and you can see the center loop here and the 2 guy lines going to each of the tent stakes. Looking pretty even. Next, I'm going to walk over to the other side and repeat that exact same process, making sure the big loops are even, which will ultimately even the length from the small loop in the center to the tent stakes on each side. Once we're good there, we're going to walk over to the other side, and what we're going to do now is a dry fit before we actually attach the tarp. You're going to take your tent pole, take the center loop, and put it around the spike and stand it up. So now what we're looking for is we do not want our tent pole straight up and down. We actually want it cocked outward a little away from the tarp. But it doesn't have to be perfect because we can always adjust it later. We just want a ballpark. Now that our dry fit is looking good, we're going to take off the center loop and we're going to move over to the red straps in the tip of the tarp. The circular grommet is attached to the inner fireproof tarp, and the triangle grommet on the outside is attached to the outer tarp. Now, what you want to do is stack the circular grommet first. Now, whether you keep it attached like I do, or you can have it loose like I'm showing you here, you want the circular grommet, the inner tarp, attached first, meaning at the bottom of the stack. On top of that is going to go the triangular grommet, and this is key, your guy line loop goes on top of that at the very end, because that's what's going to keep the tension down and keep everything from coming apart. Now this is kind of the tricky part. You're going to erect that entire section you just put together while holding the pole. And at this point, you're going to want to keep that outwardly cocked pole angle. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And what I'm going to do now is grab onto the tarp and pull light tension towards the direction that I'm walking. Pick up the rest of the tarp, and you're going to see here that end is just erect by me pulling very lightly on the tarp. So now you can see we are at the other end of the ridge line. There is the circular grommet attached to the inner fireproof tarp, the triangular grommet attached to the outer tarp, and you're going to see a little problem here that is real time that you might encounter, but I'll show you how you can counter this and get by if you have set this up right. So here I'm trying to get the spike on to everything attached. So in goes the circular, followed by the triangle. And you can see here, the tarp is fully extended. So I am at the end of the tarp and I'm trying to reach for the guy line and I can't reach for it. So I'm sitting here thinking, and this is something that you can do if there is no wind and you've set everything up pretty good. This will work. I'm actually going to drop the tarp connected to the pole very lightly, and just the weight of the tarp itself, the other side is going to stay standing. I honestly couldn't believe this worked. You can see the wind is picking up a little, but that shows you the engineering of how this structure, when fully put up, is extremely stable. So I put the tarp down, I'm walking to the other side, I'm actually making some adjustments as we're going.
We're all envious of that. The rumple.
I have the loop in hand. Now I'm walking back to pick up the tarp pole. Now I pick up the pole that is properly stacked and the guy line goes on the outside. Now I'm going to fully stand up this tent pole. And for the most part, this is going to stand by itself. So what I'm doing now is making more adjustments to the tautness of the guy line. I don't want it super tight. I don't want it super loose. I want it just enough to be snug so that I can make further adjustments as we continue setting up the tarp. And you're going to see here in a second, I'm going to be able to walk away and it's going to be pretty stable, even as the wind picks up. So now that the two main poles are up, the next thing to do is to stake down and guide down the other 4 tie down points. The further away you make these from the tarp, the wider the angle is going to be. And the closer you make them, the tighter it's going to be. And these also have the aluminum tab, so it is adjustable. Oops, it was windy. This is real life scenario. And the stake came back up. Like I said, I usually do the stakes about halfway because at the end, tweaking the adjustments to make it absolutely perfect is essential. But I'm giving it a good hammer down right there as I complete the other 3. So you'll notice from this shot, the inner fireproof tarp is not attached to the grommet points that tie down. I did this so you can see that there is supposed to be a gap between the inner fireproof layer and the outer tarp. If I remember correctly, there's supposed to be a gap because the inner tarp, although fire resistant, may get super hot and you don't want that heat transferring to the outer tarp, which it may damage. So that air protects your outer tarp. And what I'm doing here is just hooking the inner tarp to the outer tarp, and we're basically set up. So now I'm just going around making sure all my tent stakes are hammered all the way down. And I do want to point out, you want the angle of your tarp pole to be a little bit cocked outward. You don't want it straight up and down. This one's a little too straight. So what I'm going to do to make it a little bit angled out is come in and take the bottom and move it towards the center of the tarp. That's going to give me that angle I want. That angle is going to allow you to get the tension that you need to keep your ridge line nice and taut. And to tighten this up, you just go to those aluminum tabs again and adjust the guy lines to give you that great tension. So that's basically the walkthrough of the Takibi Tarp Hexa set. Here I am setting it up at the same campground when it was misty. It was great to keep the mist off us. It also does create not just the vibe at night, but it keeps that heat from the fire pits coming down. Look at this, it's awesome. It also does a great job of keeping rain or heavy mist off the occupants. And here it is in wind. And one time we woke up and this was like the only thing still standing. So if you do it properly, it's gonna stand up to 30 to 40 mile an hour gusts. Please let me know if y'all have any questions or comments and I can answer them in the comment section or another video. Until then, remember to keep your camp safe, clean, and informed. Like, follow, and subscribe for more camp stuff.